Do I write my music according to my lifestyle? If I'm sad, I write sad music. If I'm being divorced, I write divorce albums. If I'm sad, I write sad music. If I'm being divorced, I write divorce albums. If I'm sad, I write sad music. If I'm being divorced, I write divorce albums.
When Midnight Love's Sexual Healing hit the airwaves in October of 1982, many saw it as Marvin Gaye's mighty comeback, a golden opportunity for him to get back to the top of the world where he once was.
Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye.
But little did they know that barely 17 months later, Marvin would be no more, having been shot not by anyone, but by his father, and not by any other gun, but one which Marvin had bought for him as a Christmas gift to protect the family from intruders.
Soul singer Marvin Gaye, whose career spanned over 25 years, including the birth of the Motown sound to the 80s, was shot to death yesterday in Los Angeles.
Coming just a day to his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye's death came as a shocker to his fans and friends, who found it hard to come to terms to the news, even at one point believing it to be a hoax, having fallen on April Fool's Day of 1984.
It was April Fool's Day, so people didn't want to believe it. It was such an insane idea that Marvin Gaye's been shot by his father. There's no way.
Blame games filled the air, with many throwing tantrums at Marvin's father for pulling the trigger. But as unreal and unbelievable as it sounds, there's more than meets the eye. Marvin Gaye was an extraordinary talent with a wide vocal range that spanned a piercing falsetto, a smooth mid-range tenor, and a deep gospel growl. Beyond his singing abilities, he was a groundbreaking composer and producer who played a pivotal role in the artist-controlled music movement of the 70s. His style also set him apart, from the sharp, clean-cut Motown suits of the 60s to the more relaxed, funky attire of the 1970s. Gaye consistently captured attention. One article even labeled him the granddaddy of the American heritage look. His soft-spoken, down-to-earth demeanor, coupled with undeniable charisma, added layers to his public persona. But with every high, there is a low. With every special blessing comes a curse. Behind the scenes, Marvin's personal life was marked by turmoil, culminating in a tragic and shocking end. The circumstances leading to his untimely death left many questioning the official explanations. Was the official death story just a script to cover up the true cause? Was it really a matter of a father killing his successful son out of jealousy? Was it a matter of self-defense? Was it a matter of a disturbed son at the end of the rope, and his only way out was to pass down his guilt and frustrations to his father, whose approval he never got? Or was it a move by the industry aimed at heavily profiting from his demise? To crack this case open, to find answers, we need to go back, way back to the beginning of time, and pick all the clues left behind, solving all the puzzles along the way logically and without bias. But before we do so, hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and like the video to enable it reach a greater audience and help our family grow. We don't take your overwhelming support for granted. From the ugly to the funny to the raw scenes, this is the untold story of Marvin Pence Gaye Jr., the Prince of Soul. On the 1st of October 1914, in a farm along Catnip Hill Pike in Jessamine County, Kentucky, Marvin Pence Gaye Sr. was born as the third of 15 children of parents George and Mamie Gaye. His middle name, Pence, was given to him in honor of the doctor that helped deliver him. His parents were sharecroppers who struggled to provide for their large family, eventually moving to Lexington around 1919 in search of better opportunities. On top of the dire poverty, Marvin Sr. and his siblings also experienced a challenging childhood marked by his father's physical abuse. According to David Ritz's book, Divided Soul, The Life of Marvin Gaye, it is alleged that the violence was often directed at his wife and children, particularly after he discovered that 5 of his children were not straight. While in Lexington, to avoid the chaos, Mama Mamie sought comfort in religion, joining the House of God, a Seventh-day Pentecostal church. Marvin Sr. followed his mother into faith, becoming an ardent believer and eventually feeling called to preach. His fervor and special gift were soon recognized by church leaders, who included him in evangelist groups to spread their faith further. In September 1934, Marvin Sr. moved to Washington, D.C. to be ordained as a bishop at the church's annual convocation, with his close friend Bishop Simon Rawlings appointed as his assistant. It was during this period that Marvin Sr. and Simon encountered Alberta Cooper, a captivating woman who caught both their attentions. To resolve their mutual interest amicably, they let Alberta choose between them. Marvin Sr.'s charm won her over, and after a period of courtship, they married on July 2, 1935, and settled in a small house in the southeastern part of the city. It, however, didn't take a long time for the two to have their first disagreement. See, Alberta, born in 1913 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, just like Marvin Sr., had also endured a difficult childhood under the hands of her father, who at one time even went to the extent of shooting her mother during an argument. In fact, Alberta didn't start school till she was 8. And even though her father would later die in a psychiatric hospital, the damage on her was already done, and fear is what became her middle name. Shortly before she met Marvin Sr., Alberta had become pregnant, and fearing her father's wrath, her mother sent her to stay with a relative in Washington, D.C. after she gave birth to her son, Michael. This child was the reason behind the couple's disagreement. Marvin Sr., staunch in his beliefs, refused to raise another man's child. To prevent further conflict, Alberta sent Michael to live with her sister. Michael would only discover the truth about his biological mother in his teenage years. On December 17, 1936, the couple welcomed their first child, a daughter named Jean Mabel. As a tradition back then, it was the norm for a son to take over his father's legacy, and Marvin Sr. was no exception. He really fancied having one to pass down the family's legacy. So when the couple got one on April 2, 1939, he was the happiest man and a proud father. He named the kid Marvin Pence Gaye Jr., just as he had wanted. In his heart, he felt his son was destined for greatness. The couple later had 2 more children, Frankie and Zayla. Marvin Sr. had a clear mission for his son, Marvin Jr., to follow in his footsteps as a singer and preacher, upholding what he considered God's will. With church services originally held at their home, Marvin Sr. kept his son close, nurturing their bond and preparing him in every way possible. On top of being gifted in delivering sermons, Marvin Sr. also had a good singing voice and was a proficient self-taught pianist, skills he ensured he taught a young Marvin in the numerous father-son sessions. A young Marvin admired his father's roles and was eager to emulate them, feeling a divine call to do so. At age 4, Marvin Sr. introduced him to the congregation, where Marvin Jr. sang as he accompanied him on piano. Everyone loved him, from the church members to his mother, except for one person, his father. He wanted him to do more. Back then, in many traditional black families, fathers often withheld overt praise more so to their sons, believing that understatement or critical feedback motivated better performance and resilience. They expressed pride indirectly, often through high expectations or by emphasizing the potential for improvement. "You can do better than this," was what many of us live by. As to our fathers, it was a way to keep us on toes and not let our guards down by letting the praise get into our heads. It worked for some, but for the others, especially whose parents never spoke in one voice, failed terribly. This was the case for a young Marvin. His father's lack of visible approval was challenging, as it set a bar that seemed impossibly high for a boy his age, overshadowing the encouragement he received from his mother and the rest. Initially, Marvin Jr.'s growing popularity in church was seen positively by his father, Marvin Sr., as it rejuvenated the congregation. However, tensions arose when Marvin Sr. noticed that the congregation was more enthusiastic and excited about his son's singing than his own sermons. This marked the genesis of a lifelong feud, fueled by Marvin Sr.'s self-centered nature and desire to be the focal point of admiration. He began to see his son as a competitor. With this, his wife Alberta turned most of her attention to Marvin Jr., in a bid to encourage him in his special gift of singing, neglecting his husband's needs in the process. Feeling sidelined, Marvin Sr. developed feelings of jealousy towards his son. For the records, this wasn't the only reason she silently hated his husband. She described her husband as lazy. He never wanted to work to provide for his family and would come up with all sorts of excuses to not work. At one point, he worked at a post office and jumped to the idea of retiring early after he developed a minor back issue. With insufficient church offerings to support the family, Alberta was compelled to work as a domestic worker around town, a role she silently resented. Marvin Sr.'s strict parenting approach is also something that his wife didn't subscribe to. As a bishop, he ruled by the scriptures and was heavy on the spare the rod, spoil the child method. He wanted his children to be a representation of what he preached. It sounded as a good plan, but problem laid on the lengths he went when disciplining the kids. One of them was when he was testing their knowledge on their Bible verses. Any small misquote and ignorance resulted into a proper beating. Another issue was that the kids had a problem with wetting their beds, more so a young Marvin. No mercy was shown here too. Beating wasn't the only thing that the kids considered a nightmare. Marvin Sr. also played psychological games with them. He would at times delay the beating, pass by their rooms devilishly beating the belt against the walls to increase the tension, something that tortured the kids more than even the beating itself. The people who were housed by the family over the years, too, added salt to the wound. At one time, they housed Marvin Gaye's aunt, who during their usual beating, together with the mother, went to the extent of kneeling to plead with the father to stop beating the kids, efforts that fell on deaf ears. Michael, Marvin's elder half-brother, in one of his visits, once encouraged young Marvin to resist their father's tyranny. When Marvin Sr. discovered Michael's influence, he banished him from the house again, deepening the family's divisions and further isolating Marvin Jr. in a home where violence and psychological manipulation were alarmingly routine. Over time, the affection Marvin Jr. once felt for his father dwindled, transforming into resentment. Efforts to win his father's approval went unnoticed, while his missteps were met with swift punishment. Feeling unloved, Marvin began to mirror the animosity he perceived from his father. Marvin's encounters outside the household also widened his rift with his father. He had attended Syphax Elementary School before proceeding to Randall Junior High School, where his nightmares continued. The Gaye family's unique practices, such as attending church on Saturdays and not Sundays like the rest, coupled by abstaining from celebrating Christmas, made them weird in their neighbors' eyes, and the kids had trouble making friends. Their last name, Gaye, was also something that made a young Marvin an easy target in school for bullies. Further complicating matters, Marvin's father wore clothing typically associated with women and had a gentle demeanor, prompting classmates to mock Marvin for having a sissy father. These humiliations at school, largely ignored by his father, intensified Marvin's feelings of resentment. To cope, Marvin leaned into his musical talents, joining the Randall Junior High Glee Club, where his singing prowess gained him popularity, particularly among girls, and introduced him to doo-wop groups, fostering friendships. Additionally, Marvin took up boxing to defend himself, although he often chose flight over fight when confronted by bullies. As a teenager, Marvin's rebellion escalated in a bid for his father's attention. He would deliberately miss church on Saturdays, enduring beatings as a consequence. While his siblings complied with their father's strict rules to avoid punishment, Marvin's defiance led his father to doubt their familial connection, further straining their already fraught relationship. Nevertheless, Marvin graduated from junior high in 1954 and briefly attended Spingarn High School before transferring to Cardozo High School, where his passion for music deepened. At Cardozo, his doo-wop group from Randall, which included the likes of Reese Palmer, expanded and was renamed the DC Tones. During this period, Marvin transitioned from singing solely spiritual music to other genres, a shift his father remained unaware of. Marvin hoped his father would appreciate the lyrics regardless of the genre, but he was mistaken. Anything that didn't involve praising God was a no for him. As his musical talents brought him attention and admiration, particularly from female classmates, Marvin's focus on his studies waned, resulting in poor grades that further strained his relationship with his father. Disapproving of Marvin's musical direction, his father saw Marvin's faltering academic performance as a sign of his misguided priorities. Seeking an escape from his father's harsh oversight, Marvin saw enlistment in the Air Force as his chance for freedom. Despite his father's skepticism about his suitability for military life, Marvin joined, dropping out of school in the 11th grade. Turns out his father was right. The strict discipline of military life mirrored the constraints he hoped to escape. Frustrated by the rigidity, like always attending classes, and the tiring manual tasks like peeling potatoes, Marvin was not ready for the hardships. He wanted out. His rebellious nature resurfaced while there. He engaged in various acts of defiance, hoping to be discharged. When these efforts failed, he feigned a nervous breakdown and disobeyed orders, even avoiding visits to a military psychiatrist. His actions eventually convinced his superiors that he was unfit for service. After just 8 months, Marvin was discharged, much to his relief, ending his brief and tumultuous stint in the Air Force.
I did a horrible stint in the Air Force. It was terrible. I got an honorable discharge under general conditions in Section 214.
His time at the Air Force also did what he termed as initiation into manhood. He lost his virginity, thanks to one of the harlots that were around the base, quenching his thirst for one of his desires. What he didn't know was that the experience, which he labeled as freaky, marked the beginning of his lifelong obsession in the world of sensuality. Returning home, he was met with his father's disapproving gaze, which only fueled his already heightened rebellious spirit and bruised his little ego. To escape his father's relentless criticism, Marvin moved out and lived with friends from his singing days back in school. He and his friend Reese Palmer briefly worked at a food warehouse to make ends meet, but were soon dismissed. This setback reignited Marvin's passion for music, leading him and Palmer, along with Chester Simmons from the Rainbows and James Nolan, to form the Marquis. Their talent quickly landed them gigs in clubs and on television, and they even collaborated with prominent names like guitarist Bo Diddley and Billy Stewart at OK Records, producing singles like Hey Little Schoolgirl and Wyatt Earp in 1957. Despite their efforts, the Marquis struggled to sustain success and were eventually dropped by the label. Determined to prove himself, Marvin approached Harvey Fuqua of the Moonglows after a performance and secured an audition. This golden opportunity came just as the Moonglows were experiencing internal conflicts, leading to their disbandment. Marvin's group impressed Fuqua, who hired them, and renamed the group Harvey and the New Moonglows, and relocated them to Chicago to sign with Chess Records. Under Chess, the group found work as session singers for established acts such as Chuck Berry, singing on the songs Back in the USA and Almost Grown, and Etta James' Chained to My Rocking Chair. His biggest contribution with the Moonglows came when he sang on lead vocals on Mama Lucci under the label.
My Mama Lucci, she's a brand new coochie.
However, even though Marvin's confidence continued to grow, the group struggled to achieve a major hit, overshadowed by the label's focus on established stars. In a bid to survive, they resumed touring, which exposed Marvin to the world, and saw him go back to his hometown, providing his family a rare chance to see him perform. The tour also exposed a shy and naive Marvin to new experiences that drifted him away from his childhood godly ways. Of the many people he encountered, one of them was a burlesque dancer who was slightly older to him, nicknamed Titty Tassel Tony. She introduced him to marijuana and more, and significantly shaped his evolving identity in the world of sensuality. And even though the tours brought them invaluable experience and exposure, financial stability remained elusive, with them even struggling to get a meal at times.
He thought that we would make a nice replacement, so he took us on the road and starved us to death out there. That was really an experience.
Back from the tour, it was evident that Chess Records had its eyes on a number of things, and the Moonglows was not one of them. One of the main things they had great interest in was a new label in Detroit going by the name Anna Records, formed by sisters Anna and Gwen Gordy, together with songwriter Raquel Billy Davis. With the rapid rise of Jackie Wilson, thanks to Gwen and Barry Gordy, together with Billy Davis, the burgeoning sound in Detroit was slowly taking over. Sensing a shift from doo-wop to the new Detroit sound, Harvey Fuqua was prompted by Leonard Chess to move to Detroit and collaborate with Anna Records as a liaison for Chess. Recognizing Marvin's exceptional talents in playing instruments, composing music, and his unique vocal range, Fuqua was committed to bringing him along, honoring a promise to Marvin's father to look out for him. Together, they relocated to Detroit, marking a significant transition in Marvin's musical career and effectively signaling the end of the Moonglows. At Anna Records, Fuqua began working with Gwen Gordy, Billy Davis, Lamont Dozier, and Johnny Bristol. To keep Marvin busy, they found a gig at a local nightclub going by the name Harvey Fuqua of the Moonglows, featuring Marvin Gaye, his protege. Through this, Fuqua was acquainted with key figures in that scene, the Gordy family, with parents who had prospered in the nightclub and real estate sectors. He also came to know the ambitious Berry Gordy of Tamla Records on a personal level, whose vision greatly impressed him. Initially, Anna Records thrived under Chess's distribution. However, dynamics shifted when Berry Gordy produced Barrett Strong's Money under Tamla Records, which distributed nationally through Anna Records, becoming a massive hit. The astute Fuqua was in awe. Over time, working closely with Gwen Gordy while Billy Davis promoted Anna Records on the road, Fuqua and Gwen grew close and struck up a relationship. Fuqua would later marry Gwen in 1961, deepening his ties with the Gordy family as Berry was laying the foundation for what would become the Tamla and Motown labels. Concurrently, Fuqua and Gwen launched their own labels, Harvey and Tri-Fi Records, signing and issuing records by notable artists like the Spinners, Shorty Long, Junior Walker, and Ann Bogan, later of the Marvelettes. As Harvey Fuqua's relationship with Gwen Gordy flourished, his time with Marvin Gaye dwindled, leaving Marvin feeling isolated. This solitude led Marvin to Anna Gordy's office, where he found himself visiting her daily without fail. What started as frequent visits blossomed into a romantic relationship. Despite the considerable age gap, Anna was 17 years Marvin's senior. Their relationship sparked curiosity and skepticism, partly because both were in positions to potentially benefit professionally. With his mentor Fuqua marrying Gwen, it seemed as if Marvin was doing so too, to align himself with the successful Gordy clan too. However, their bond was deeper than it appeared. Both felt a sense of loneliness, and Marvin, who had always been close to his mother, found a maternal figure in Anna. Beyond personal connections, Anna recognized Marvin's songwriting talent as a boon for her label. Together, they shared a common goal: to harness Marvin's potential and elevate him to stardom. This partnership was fueled by genuine affection and mutual aspirations, making their relationship both strategic and heartfelt. The ambitious Berry Gordy had acquired an $800 loan from his family's savings account to set up his Tamla and Motown labels, and had just signed Marvin Gaye through an agreement with Fuqua, who had accepted the proposal to fold his labels to take up a position as the head of the company's Artists and Repertoire Office, responsible for signing new artists to whom he became a mentor and for overseeing the production process. As the label generated heat, Marvin spent extensive time in the studio as a session drummer and backup singer. With Anna's influence, he was signed as a solo artist, yet resisted the rhythm and blues platform. He wanted to break out as a jazz artist, as a Nat Cole Frank Sinatra crooner. But Berry Gordy had seen the light and knew where the trend of music was headed. His prior attempt to run a jazz record store had failed, affirming his belief in the viability of R&B and soul, a conviction strengthened by his successful collaboration with Jackie Wilson. Marvin didn't see this at that time. All he wanted was to follow his heart and do what he believed to be his calling. Holding his ground, Marvin released Let Your Conscience Be Your Guide and the album The Soulful Moods of Marvin Gaye in 1961, both of which performed poorly. Throughout that year, Marvin contributed to recordings by The Miracles, The Marvelettes, and Jimmy Reed, while Anna Gordy bolstered his confidence. Berry Gordy also partnered Gaye with fellow special artist Smokey Robinson and 11-year-old Little Stevie Wonder, who, just like him, were the only artists who could do it all: play all the instruments, compose the lyrics, and sing their songs. And while everyone around him did what they could to ensure he realized his potential, Marvin never saw it this way. To him, he was no average artist. He was part of the royal family. Gaye even refused to take the stage tuition offered to all Motown artists, something he later regretted. However, he did allow Maxine Miss Powell to teach him to sing with his eyes open, so he didn't look like he was singing in his sleep.
I said, Marvin, you don't need as much as some of the other artists, but you do sing with your eyes closed. And it gives the illusion that you're singing in your sleep. And number one, places around the country, you have to have your eyes open.
Marvin's strong-willed nature often led to conflicts with Berry Gordy, rumored to have culminated in Gordy slapping Marvin backstage on one occasion after he refused to perform. As Marvin Gaye resisted Motown's musical direction, his career initially stalled, but he found success as a co-writer and drummer on the Marvelettes track Beechwood 45789 in 1962. His involvement in the Motown Revue later that year fueled his ambition to excel. Berry Gordy, seeing Marvin's potential in love ballads, steered him to record Stubborn Kind of Fellow, which climbed to number 8 on the R&B chart and number 46 on the Billboard Hot 100. Following successes included Hitchhike, reaching number 30, and Pride and Joy, his first top 10 hit after its release in 1963, both featured on his album That Stubborn Kind of Fellow. Inspired by his deep affection for Anna Gordy, who pushed him up the Motown Tamla ranks, these songs reflected his evolving artistry. Their marriage also happened during this time, bringing together a talented Marvin and a sound business sense in Anna. In September 1963, Marvin's release of Can I Get a Witness by Holland Dozier Holland marked his breakout on the international scene, introducing him to the world in style. It's Marvin Gaye's rising star aligned with Mary Wells, another fast-rising Motown talent, leading Berry Gordy to pair them for a duet album in an attempt to boost each other's profiles. Their album, together, climbed to number 42 on the pop chart, with hits like Once Upon a Time and What's the Matter with You Baby, each breaking into the top 20. Despite this success, Gaye continued to pursue ballads, releasing albums filled with covers like I'll Be Around and show tunes such as People and Hello Dolly, which were less commercially successful compared to his R&B hits. Eventually, Gaye embraced the R&B genre that suited him best. His album, How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, crafted by Holland Dozier Holland, soared to number 6 on the Hot 100 and gained UK recognition. His television appearances, including on American Bandstand and in the concert film The Tammy Show, boosted his profile further. In 1965, Gaye topped the R&B charts with I'll Be Doggone and Ain't That Peculiar, both becoming million sellers. Gaye once again revisited jazz ballads in a tribute to the late Nat King Cole. The tribute album greatly underperformed, fueling his frustration, blaming Motown for not marketing it, and grew jealous of the amount of success other acts like the Supremes and Stevie Wonder were having during this time. This frustration led to tensions seeping into his home life, where his marriage to Anna Gordy became increasingly strained and was reportedly turbulent, including public spats. Anna was feeling threatened by the attention Marvin received from young women during tours, and her inability to conceive a child made her worried about the direction of their marriage. And even though she did everything to make Marvin happy, having that wild character in bed being one of them, the void of not conceiving a child couldn't be filled. In a controversial move, Anna orchestrated a plan involving her niece, Denise Gordy, as a surrogate. To maintain appearances, Anna feigned pregnancy. On November 17, 1965, Marvin Pence Gaye III was born and was immediately adopted by them. Back to music, to soothe Marvin Gaye during this period, Motown paired him with Kim Weston, resulting in the 1966 album Take Two. Their hit single It Takes Two climbed to number 16 in the UK, top 20, by January 1967 and became a radio favorite. However, Weston departed from Motown in 1967 following her husband, Mickey Stevenson's opportunity to lead his own label with MGM in Los Angeles. She was replaced by Tammy Terrell, whose vibrant personality meshed well with Marvin's reserved nature. Their collaboration proved magical, producing top hits like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Your Precious Love in 1967, and Ain't Nothing Like the Real Thing, and You're All I Need to Get By in 1968, dominating R&B charts. It was no doubt the Terrell-Gaye chemistry produced some of the most memorable love songs of the Motown era, and the aura of romance that the two created in their songs led to persistent rumors that they were lovers. They would be voted the #1 R&B duo in Cashbox magazine's annual year-end survey in 1970. Though the partnership was creatively and professionally successful, the duo faced challenges from the start. On October 14, 1967, while performing on stage, Tammy Terrell collapsed into Marvin's arms due to a brain tumor after suffering from severe migraine headaches for a while. This marked the beginning of her health struggles, which eventually halted their performances together. Devastated, Gaye grew increasingly disenchanted with the music industry. Looking for a distraction from this, on October 6, 1968, Gaye had the rare opportunity to sing the national anthem during Game 4 of the 1968 World Series, held at Tiger Stadium in Detroit, Michigan, between the Detroit Tigers and the St. Louis Cardinals. In late 1968, Gaye's recording of I Heard It Through the Grapevine became his first to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, selling over 4 million copies. Despite the acclaim, Gaye battled feelings of being controlled by others. He felt like a puppet, Barry's puppet, Anna's puppet. He, however, continued to produce hits like Too Busy Thinking About My Baby and managed his first #1 R&B album with MPG in 1969. Additionally, he contributed significantly to the originals, helping craft hits like Baby I'm For Real and The Bells. On March 16, 1970, Marvin Gaye was devastated by the death of his duet partner, Tammy Terrell, who succumbed to brain cancer. Her family blamed Motown for not protecting her from abuse in the hands of her then-boyfriend, David Ruffin, which they believed worsened her condition. As a result, Marvin, who they regarded as her only true friend, was the only person from the whole of Motown they allowed to attend the funeral. Tammy's death had Marvin spiral into depression and substance abuse. This period also coincided with his personal struggles. From his marriage to his struggle for artistic independence from Motown's stringent control, which limited his creative expression to primarily love songs. Discontent with this and influenced by conversations with his brother about the Vietnam War, Marvin embarked on a deeper exploration of social themes in his music. This introspection led to the creation of the groundbreaking album, What's Going On?, initially sparked by an act of police brutality witnessed by Four Tops member Ronaldo Obi Benson. Even though Motown head Berry Gordy's had reservations about the album's controversial content and potential impact on Marvin's mainstream appeal, the title track was released in 1971. It soared to #1 on the Billboard R&B charts, staying there for 5 weeks, and achieved significant pop chart success, selling over 2 million copies. The album, Marvin's first to sell 1 million copies, also produced other top 10 hits like Mercy Mercy Me, The Ecology, and Inner City Blues. Meanwhile, Marvin dabbled in acting and even flirted with a professional football career with the Detroit Lions, which did not materialize due to concerns over potential injuries. Following the commercial success of the What's Going On album, Marvin Gaye secured a historic $1 million recording contract with Motown in 1971, making him the highest-earning black singer at the time. He followed up with the Trouble Man soundtrack in 1972 and then moved to Los Angeles along with his family as Motown relocated its headquarters. In 1973, amid personal challenges, Marvin filed for legal separation from Anna Gordy. Struggling with writer's block and personal issues during this period, he channeled his energy into creating music that reflected his inner turmoil. He partnered with Ed Townsend on working on Let's Get It On. He found a muse in Janice Hunter, the daughter of jazz musician Slim Gaillard, through Ed during a studio session for Let's Get It On. Ed was at the time seeing Janice's mom, and had taken Janice to meet his childhood crush in Marvin as a birthday treat. Janice was 17 years younger than Marvin at the time. Their meeting sparked a connection that inspired Marvin deeply, leading to the creation of songs like If I Should Die Tonight. Let's Get It On would later become one of Motown's best-selling records, reaching 4 million sales by 1974. Marvin and Janice eventually started a family, having 2 children, Nona in 1974 and Frankie in 1975. In collaboration with Diana Ross, Marvin released the duet album Diana and Marvin, which achieved international success. This was followed by extensive touring and the release of I Want You in 1976, which also went on to sell over 1 million copies. The renewed contract with Motown allowed Gaye to also build his own custom-made recording studio. Marvin's creative output continued to flourish, with the release of Live at the London Palladium in 1977, which featured the hit Got to Give It Up. His success enabled him to open Radio City Music Hall's New York Pop Arts Festival, September of that year too. Every time Marvin seemed to be making 2 steps forward, his personal issues always seemed to be taking him 1 step back. His failure to sort out his personal issues always seemed to catch up with him. To begin with, he was known for his generosity, often employing homeless individuals and leaving $50 tips for waitresses. He purchased a neo-Tudor mansion for his parents in Los Angeles' Crenshaw district, gifted his father a new Cadillac. His financial generosity extended to a point of personal financial strain. In November 1975, Anna Gordy filed for divorce, initiating a prolonged and contentious legal battle that culminated in a settlement in May 1977. The court mandated Gaye to pay $5,500 monthly for Anna and their adopted son's maintenance. Despite his numerous assets, including a 5-acre estate, a Jamaican beach property, 14 cars, a yacht, a speedboat, and a share in the New Orleans Jazz NBA franchise, Gaye struggled with the first payment. Additionally, he faced lawsuits from musicians for unpaid wages and a former manager claiming $2 million in unpaid dues, alongside the U.S. government pursuing him for back taxes. Gaye had constructed a lavish recording studio on Sunset Boulevard, equipped with a huge hot tub and an oversized waterbed. But financial woes led to a government lockout of the studio. His 1978 album, Here My Dear, intended to address financial demands from his divorce with Anna, flopped, pushing him toward bankruptcy. His relationship with Janice Hunter also deteriorated. Marvin had, in his fantasies, coerced Janice into having sexual relationships with other men. During their problems, Janice hooked up with Teddy Pendergrass and Rick James, Marvin's greatest rivals at the time. Janice, fed up with all these, pushed for divorce. Struggling with a cocaine addiction and financial ruin, Gaye spent 9 months as a beach bum in Hawaii, desperately seeking financial help from friends and family, including selling his mother's jewelry for drug money. To alleviate his financial woes, Marvin Gaye embarked on a European tour. Facing 2 divorces, unresolved IRS tax issues, and a slew of demanding creditors, he chose to remain in Europe post-tour, effectively going into exile.
You owe the government $4 million.
I forgot to tell you that. I just want everybody to know why I got the heck out of Dodge.
During this period, estranged from Janice, Gaye began a relationship with Eugenie Viss, whom he met after a concert in Amsterdam. He engaged in emotionally cold behavior, pushing her into group sex activities and then condemning her participation. Janice finalized their divorce in February 1981. While abroad, Motown released Gaye's unfinished album, In Our Lifetime, without his consent, sparking his fury and ending their 2-decade partnership. Gaye vowed never to record for Motown again, and in 1982, Motown sold his contract to CBS Records. While in Belgium, hiding from the IRS and creditors, Marvin Gaye had a revealing conversation with a concerned friend who was disturbed by the pornographic material in Gaye's living space. The friend suggested Gaye needed some sexual healing and possibly counseling to help redirect his life. Although the advice went largely unheeded, it inspired Gaye to write one of his most famous songs. CBS Records quickly released Sexual Healing as a single, capitalizing on Gaye's European exposure, and included it on the Rushed album Midnight Love. The track became the biggest-selling soul single in years, earning Gaye 2 Grammy Awards for Best R&B Male Vocal Performance and Best R&B Instrumental.
Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye.
The success of Sexual Healing led CBS to promote a tour from April to August 1983. Gaye, whose primary sources of income were touring and record royalties, was not expected to handle the tour well due to his erratic behavior and dislike for touring, exacerbated by the physical demands and his struggles during downtime from his drug use. Paranoid, Gaye believed a hitman was targeting him, wore a bulletproof vest constantly, and surrounded himself with bodyguards. At one point, he even hired the celebrity lawyer F. Lee Bailey to try to discover who was attempting to take him out. After the tour ended, Gaye returned to the U.S. to care for his mother following her kidney surgery, moving into the house he had purchased for his parents in 1973. Just like old times, the father-son wrangles didn't take long before they resurfaced. Marvin's addiction problems diverted all the attentions towards him, leaving his father facing neglect. Also, the house was in some way always chaotic due to the high number of Marvin's friends making frequent visits. With this, the two men struggled to keep their distance from one another and always had numerous quarrels. It is said that during one quarrel at the house, the elder Gaye called police to have his son leave the property, which he had to oblige. After staying with one of his sisters for a while, however, Marvin returned to the property, stating to a friend of his that he wanted to make peace with his father. But with neither of them willing to lower their ego, this was going to be an uphill task.
Father, which art in heaven.
On Christmas Day 1983, amid his struggle with cocaine addiction and deep paranoia about being murdered, Marvin Gaye gifted his father a pistol for protection and as a sign to show that he cared. This gift was kept by Marvin Sr., who felt it provided a sense of security. As 1984 began, Marvin's addictions intensified, and his mental state deteriorated due to drug-induced paranoia. His sensual perversion, too, completely destroyed his mind and was reported to have doubled his watching of pornographic material. The tension at home escalated, particularly as Marvin Sr. grew uncomfortable with the frequent presence of Marvin's unpredictable visitors. Marvin Sr. feared these disruptions might eventually cause him to lose his home. By March 31, 1984, relations between Marvin's parents had soured significantly. They had been sleeping in separate rooms for nearly a decade. An argument erupted over a missing insurance policy document, with Marvin Sr. accusing his wife, Alberta, of misplacing it. Marvin intervened, demanding his father leave Mama Alberta alone. That night, however, no physical altercation occurred. The following day, April 1st, just a day before Marvin's 45th birthday, the situation worsened. Another dispute over the missing document led Marvin, dressed in his maroon robe, to confront his father after overhearing him shouting at his mother again. The confrontation turned physical, with Marvin shoving and punching his father. Mama Alberta managed to stop the scuffle. It is said that Gaye Sr. had been on several occasions quoted telling his children he brought them to this world and had the power to take them out. He left Marvin's bedroom and a few minutes at approximately 12:38 p.m. reappeared with the pistol gifted to him by his own son. He fired the first shot into his son's chest. As Gaye slumped to the floor, his father walked over and fired another shot into his chest, point blank. Marvin's brother Frankie, who was next door, rushed over upon hearing the shots only to find Marvin critically wounded. Holding him and trying to stop the bleeding, Marvin, struggling to speak, uttered his last disturbing words. "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it." Marvin had attempted to take his own life a couple of times during his time, the first being after Tammy's death and problems with the label, which Berry Gordy's father had talked him out of, but didn't quite have the guts to go all the way. Marvin was pronounced dead upon arrival at California Hospital Medical Center, marking a tragic end to the longtime feud between father and son, and also his own tortured and disturbed life. Initially, news of his death was met with skepticism due to the coincidence of April Fool's Day. But confirmation of the event plunged fans worldwide into mourning, with many rushing to buy his remaining records on the shelves to remind them of the legendary singer. An estimated 10,000 people attended Gaye's funeral, which was conducted by the chief apostle of the House of God, his family's church. Smokey Robinson gave a reading, and Stevie Wonder sang. Gaye was laid to rest in his gold and white uniform-style suit with an ermine wrap around his shoulders. He would be posthumously elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987. Marvin Sr., on the other hand, was given a 6-year suspended sentence and 5 years of probation for the shooting. During this time, Alberta Gaye filed for divorce after 49 years of marriage. Gaye eventually returned briefly to the Gramercy Place residence, but health issues forced him to move to a nursing home, first in Inglewood around 1986 and in the final years of his life, to a nursing home in Culver City, California, where he died of pneumonia on October 10, 1998, aged 84. Many who were with Marvin in his final days point out that he seemed to have lost his zest for life, appearing desperate for an escape. Even though this might have been the case, how he exited was cruel and in no way justifies the act. His reluctance to confront his personal challenges might have ultimately overwhelmed him, yet it is his extraordinary musical gift that we remember most vividly. His genius lay in his ability to convey deep emotions through his music, which served not only as a form of expression, but as a therapeutic outlet. When Marvin performed, it was as if he was painting on a canvas of melodies and lyrics. It's intriguing to consider how his life might have unfolded differently had he not entered the entertainment industry, or if he had addressed his personal demons more directly. He gained the world, but ended up losing his soul. Do you think his decision to not follow his father's guidance significantly affected his life's trajectory? Also, what are your cherished memories of him? Share your nostalgic moments in the comments section below. Rest in peace, Marvin. Though you are no longer with us, your legacy endures.
Oh.